Hello again, YouTubers, Ultimate SpongeBob 101 back here again on the SpongeBob channel. In this video, we are reviewing SpongeBob episode 274, Big Bad Bubble Bass and SeaMan Sponge Haters Club. The synopsis states, Karen tells the fairy tale of a nerd trying to steal an action figure from his three little neighbors. Also, Squidward hosts a secret We Hate SpongeBob club at his house. Without further ado, let's dive right in. First up, we have the Big Bad Bubble Bass, and the Karen is basically the on and off narrator here. She's back in her fairy outfit, and the episode begins where Bubble Bass is getting ready to go to the toy barrel to pick up the Pigulon action figure. It's only available for sale on that specific day, and he dresses up in Wolfman Boy, which is apparently Pigulon's arch nemesis or something. So he does go over to the toy barrel dressed in his wolf costume, and unfortunately, he misses out on the sale. Figures are all sold out, and the store is not really sorry about it. This is when Bubble Bass notices SpongeBob and Patrick walking out with the very last Pigulon Swine Force 3 action figure, and he watches Patrick tear through the packaging, breaking his collector heart and using the figure as a back scratcher, which is classic Patrick, by the way. He has used plenty of things as back scratchers before. This drives Bubble Bass to want to get a hold of that figure from SpongeBob and Patrick. Of course, he first attempts to offer to buy, trade, or swindle the figure out of SpongeBob and Patrick, and this doesn't really work. This brings us to the first of three extra attempts. The first is him dressing up as a toy inspector, and he demands to see all the toys and inspect them to see if they are dangerous and whether they need to be extracted and brought back to the station, right? So this is a really cool part where SpongeBob actually has a vault in his house. I think if looking at the position of this vault, seems like it is part or used to be the gateway to his closet. The vault is actually made up of cardboard, which was even more hilarious. But anyways, so we go inside and there's plenty of dangerous toys, but Bubble Bass obviously says that those are just safe. And many toys later, we finally get to the Pigulon action figure. And although Bubble Bass tries to get his hands on it, he is then given a toy strapped with some dynamite and rockets. And you know what that means? It's blast off time. Yeah, so much pain for Bubble Bass in this episode. So the second attempt is Bubble Bass claiming to be a ghost hunter in a sense, and he claims that the Pigulon action figure is possessed by some ghost, right? And he wants to bring it back with him to the lab to remove the ghostly presence. Of course, SpongeBob and Patrick take things into their own hands and try to do so on the spot, which kind of shocks Bubble Bass. I was kind of shocked at this scene as well. I mean, like, seriously, you're gonna show this? But again, we had the episode SeaMan, or however that's pronounced. So back in season 9 when SpongeBob revived Rusty Ricketts, right? So I guess this is not so new of a concept in SpongeBob, and the ghost of Pigulon actually shows up, and Patrick sabotages Bubble Bass by saying that Bubble Bass started the whole thing. Finally, Bubble Bass is frustrated, right? He wants to get his hands on the action figure by hook or by crook, and he plays the whole big bad wolf kind of character, claiming that he would chuck and gluck and belch the house down. He does this to SpongeBob's house, and then later to Patrick's house after adding a little bit of hot sauce to his cola. And then finally, when SpongeBob and Patrick take refuge in Squidward's Easter Island Moai, and Squidward just kind of kicks Bubble Bass out, he attempts to do the same thing with a giant, like a tanker of Fizz Bomb Cola, and he fails because Squidward had the Easter Island Moai SpongeBob proof, which meant it should be able to withstand the giant burp as well. So Karen comes back in and tells the story of how Bubble Bass went home to cry to his mother and lie about what actually happened. So his mom actually shows up to Squidward's, blows the place down, and that's kind of sad, you know. Squidward didn't really do anything. He was just a bystander in a sense. But unfortunately, the whole house is destroyed, and SpongeBob and Patrick say, you know, it's ours. We even have the receipt to prove it. So, of course, Bubble Bass's lie is exposed, And yeah, eventually SpongeBob and Patrick do hand over the Pigulon action figure to Bubble Bass, just in a really bad condition. And the episode ends with Squidward having to rebuild his house. So if anyone really lost anything in this episode, it's really Squidward. He didn't deserve to lose his house. And overall, I thought the plot was a 7 out of 10. I really liked the idea of Bubble Bass here trying to get the action figure, but I felt that there was a real big plot hole. If the writers had just said that there was only one action figure and SpongeBob and Patrick got that, it makes sense for Bubble Bass to be so bent on getting it out of SpongeBob and Patrick. But the fact is, there probably are plenty more. He could have just gone and got, procured it from some other place. It is what it is. Animation-wise, 8 out of 10. I liked a lot of the belching. Still very cool animation. And in terms of unique characteristics, I will give it a 8 out of 10 as well because of the whole fairy tale vibe. Now, it's not new. We've had the fairy tale Karen before, but still nice to see it again. So overall, 8 out of 10. And I'm going to start rating the episode's based on a out of 30 rating. So for the overall rating, it will be 23 out of 30. So yeah, Squidward just tells Karen off at the end of the episode, but poor Squidward. He didn't have to suffer it, but overall, decent episode. So let's move on. SeaMan Sponge Haters Club begins with SpongeBob literally taking out the trash when he spots Mrs. Puff, Plankton, Bubble Bass, and the mailman heading into Squidward's house. It is time for the 431st meeting of the We Hate SpongeBob Club. Episode's main idea is pretty good. The characters claim that their motto is they're not trying to harm SpongeBob, but they just can't stand him. And they begin sharing their weekly adventures with SpongeBob. It's not very secret because SpongeBob's literally just popping up again and again throughout the episode. We have this thing called the speaking sponges, so it's kind of like maybe a stress ball, but in sponge form here. Right, so Mrs. Puff goes first, talking about how, she loves being a driving instructor. And then this is when SpongeBob shows up, and SpongeBob is intentionally presented as a very, horrifying and wicked and terrible person, ruining Mrs. Puff's life, of course. We have this design of SpongeBob as if he were a monster, basically. But this kind of reminds me of the creature from the Krusty Krab video game in Diesel Dreaming. But, there's a whole lot of stuff there. And eventually, Mrs. Puff's boating school gets destroyed again after just 1 week. So, honestly, I'm not sure how these characters can keep up rebuilding whatever SpongeBob destroys. But SpongeBob tries to invade the house again but gets kicked out. And then Bubble Bass's turn here. So basically Bubble Bass's complaint is that SpongeBob was serving him food but constantly refuses to allow Bubble Bass to eat the food because the food was not created perfect. Now this is really silly, and unlike the previous episode, this is really none of Bubble Bass's fault, and I can absolutely empathize with Bubble Bass here because SpongeBob's actions in this flashback is clearly unreasonable, right? So I don't think that there's anything I really want to complain about this one. SpongeBob is just acting really ridiculous in this portion. Eventually, Bubble Bass runs out of the Krusty Krab and even eats that little speaking sponge. So poor Bubble Bass here. Okay, so it's time for Plankton's tale. And Plankton's tale is a little bit strange. I'm not sure whether this is an exaggerated version, just like Mrs. Puff's story, or the more realistic version like Bubble Bass's story here, right? So Plankton's new invention is a stick of dynamite stuck in a toilet paper roll. Now, I don't get it, but SpongeBob is acting like a fly here. There's a part where he's sort of clucking like a chicken, if you guys get the reference. Karen and Plankton need to get rid of the sponge fly here. It doesn't go really well because eventually, in the whole chase, they actually get locked out of the chum bucket. So that's the whole problem there. And Plankton's like, no! And so he says when you encounter SpongeBob, just run. Or something along those lines. Look at Squidward's air conditioning. It does look a little bit like SpongeBob, to be honest. So it's time for Squidward to tell his tale. So Squidward's tale is literally one in real time. I'm not sure how Squidward could have predicted everything that happened here, but it's a TV show, it's a cartoon, so why not? And basically SpongeBob shows up asking for a cup of seawater, which is so silly because Squidward literally takes the cup or the little pot or pan and scoops it in the air and then gives it back to SpongeBob because they're under the sea, right? It makes sense that they're living in seawater. So of course this is an excuse for SpongeBob to infiltrate Squidward's house. And of course, when you have SpongeBob, you will have Patrick. Patrick literally glugs down the whole bowl of punch, even the ladle in the punch bowl. The whole thing comes crashing down when SpongeBob decides to bring a replacement bowl of pineapple punch made out of his own house. Literally, like, he lives in a pineapple, right? That causes the air conditioning unit to blow, and Squidward's house catches fire. So I think this scene here, it just shows how frustrated Squidward is with SpongeBob. So Squidward's house is burnt down, unfortunately, and the characters continue their meeting after SpongeBob offers to host them in his pineapple. Kind of ironic, right? Like, we Hate SpongeBob Club being hosted in SpongeBob's house. Does work out eventually for the rest of the characters, just not Squidward. There is a speaking sponge left, just one. It's the actual SpongeBob, and I thought this was really a good way to end up the episode, where the mailman's literally like twisting and venting his frustration at SpongeBob while talking how they cough up mail for months or weeks, something along those lines. And look at Patrick's expression. Even Patrick is shocked, or at least Patrick is engaged in the tale. So yeah, overall, I thought this episode was really, really cool. In terms of the plot, I will give it a 8 out of 10. Of course, Squidward got the short end of the stick here. He just got everything destroyed. But aside from that, I think the idea of this club does make sense. The animation, of course, 8 out of 10. We do have the fire. We do have the explosion, the mandatory explosion, right? When SpongeBob comes into contact with Mrs. Puff. And in terms of unique characteristics, I will give it a 7 out of 10. At the heart of this episode, it is actually just a typical annoy Squidward episode, but, you know, now we have a couple of other characters who also don't really like SpongeBob coming into the picture as well. Anyways, combining everything out of 30, that gives SeaMan Sponge Haters Club a rating of 23 out of 30, of course. So yeah, the episode ends basically with Squidward just sitting in his chair in his burned down house. Poor Squidward, but you know, that's how most of these annoy Squidward episodes go. So comment down below what you guys thought about these two episodes. Make sure to subscribe, like, favorite, comment, etc. Keep right here on Ultimate SpongeBob 101, and I'll see you guys in the next SpongeBob episode review. Bye!